That's where you go wrong, usually, with AI coding in general, when you don't have the experience, because you will have, many call it like an hallucination. And that really like opened up everything for me, learning how to use them, how to understand them, how to interact with them. I didn't really know anything about coding at that point, so one of my biggest bottlenecks for learning how to use AI effectively was learning how to code. So I had to start with learning how to code. For every time I create an agent, every time I create a tool, I want to mirror this exact thing. So I'm Rasmus. I'm a product builder based in Tallinn. For the last 2.5 years or so, I've been deep diving into AI and AI development. But yeah, I actually started my career in QA 9 years ago. I've been working my way up through product management, project management, and QA management as well. But today I'm helping companies and teams and also individuals to transform how they use and build with AI, both in the company, but also for individuals. But yeah, started when ChatGPT launched basically in November 2022. I didn't really know anything about coding at that point. So one of my biggest bottlenecks for learning how to use AI effectively was learning how to code. So I had to start with learning how to code. So dove deep into Python as well, and to kind of get a deeper understanding of programming, so that I could get to the source of the LLM and actually use the APIs, so that I could get like fine-grained control of the LLMs. And that really like opened up everything for me, learning how to use them, how to understand them, how to interact with them. So yeah, from that kind of like first API calls I managed to do, since then I have built a lot of things with AI, like agents, automations, few full stack apps as well. So I haven't only built the agent capabilities, but I've also used AI through my entire coding journey. So learning how to code in the age of AI fully. So really diving deep into all of the tools for AI coding, like most recently Cloud Code, but I've used basically everything from the beginning, from Aider to copilots to auto completion tools and so on. But yeah, today I teach basically anything from R&D to implementation, deployment, and also then measuring after the deployment is done. So it's not only coding AI that I teach, but basically everything in the entire software development lifecycle. So for real teams, enterprise level teams, and everything in between individual to an enterprise team, basically. I'm
Okay.
also developing my own framework. So like I have a framework called PRP, Product Requirement Prompts, which is like the base of what I teach. It's a context engineering framework, and it aims to be the minimum uh, packet an AI needs to plausibly ship working code in one pass, or like in one context window or one prompt, you could say.
That's a very cool intro. I got lost in the middle of it, not gonna lie. Okay, so first question on my end would be, what is QA for people who don't know, including me?
The quality assurance. So basically went from manual testing into automated testing, and I worked at a startup, so I went like from single employee to a team to kind of like QA management.
And your journey. So as I understand, for quite of some time you've done that, and after that you emerged into AI and stuff like that. So how long did it take for you to learn how to code?
It's a good question, because I still today don't focus too much on syntax, right? So I focus more on the high level stuff like architecture, design principles, and data structures, let's say. So I would say that it took me quite went quite quickly for me to like get from zero to being able to build stuff, but that was with a lot of help from AI in the beginning. So to actually learn how to code, I think it took quite a while to fully understand everything that I was doing, because with the AI, there are certain steps that you kind of jump over in the learning process that you then have to like go back to learn once you run into them in like the real world, I would say. So it took quite a while, but with the help of AI, I could get started and actually build meaningful things really quickly.
For those of interested about, for business owners, whatever, you can skip this part. But for people learning this stuff, I want to ask now specific questions about that. Do you need to learn how to code to actually build stuff nowadays?
There are a lot of risks with doing that, like security stuff and whatever, but you can certainly do it. But it will never hurt to learn how to code, I would say.
Okay, and what do you think about opinion of not learning exactly how to code? I mean, I agree with you that it doesn't hurt, but more like learning what right tools to use, like what frameworks are there, what already developed solutions are there. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that is becoming more and more important, and I think that has a lot to do with like the context engineering side of things as well. Like, what do you tell your coding assistant or your coder, AI coder, so that they know both what you want, but also so they know how to use the frameworks and tools that you want to use for your project. So I just think it's very important to understand the tools you use. So that's like not necessarily learning how to code, but you still need to kind of learn what capabilities does this tool have so that you can instruct AI how to use it.
Okay, and from my experience, from what I know, people generally tend to, first of all, like nowadays, to learn N8N to prototype stuff, and after that, they just build it out. So, what do you think about this framework? What is your framework actually when you build stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, whenever I start a new project, I think I can take that example first, and because that's what most individuals probably are starting to do. Like you have some idea and you want to like build it out, right? So I actually start with some simple idea, maybe just a one line like core product or problem description, like this is the problem I want to solve. And then I take that and I kind of run with it with some AI usually. So maybe I go straight to Claude .ai, like the chatbot version
Yeah.
of Claude, and I just chat about it, like try to like dive deep into like what are the possibilities of this, like how far can we take it, how can we build the simplest version to solve this problem, and like I kind of take it in every direction I can think of. And I personally use Cloud Code for this these days. So like if I do it today, I basically set up a new repository, I spin up Cloud Code in the terminal, and I send, 10 parallel research agents at once to like kind of explore every avenue of that problem. So and then I like have everything come back to me and I kind of synthesize everything and spend a lot of time reading and understanding the problem before I kind of start. Uh, but yeah, so something I really like doing is I take those 10, like, or whatever, how many research agents, I send them out. And while those are doing that, I go to something like Bolt or Lovable, really like Lovable. And I start to kind of like spec out the front end if I have one. So kind of like prototyping, say, vibe coding up my idea as I have the research agent go and do the research. So then when the research is done, which usually takes, a good hour for everything to synthesize, and then I have already explored it on my own as well, like kind of building a first version or a prototype of how I would have done it. And then I can kind of compare what I did to like all of those 10, let's say, research papers that come back to me. And then I can from there start to like plan the real PRD. So from there, I would like write the product requirement document and try to go really deep into the problem I'm trying to solve, why I want to solve it, who I'm solving it for, and try to, if I can. I mean, things go so quickly now, so you kind of want to find the product market fit maybe with the prototype. So spending a lot of time trying to knowing how I should test the product as I build it is, I think, something I'm trying to focus on.
And those 10 parallel agents, which you've told me about in the beginning, like those just come up with general problem solutions, like, for example, for a problem, and you develop from that, or like how does it work?
Yeah, so I mean, it's I have a couple of different techniques. So it's basically a prompt or several prompts that I is a pre-written uh, prompt where I just paste my problem statement somewhere in the middle, where I have like a placeholder where I put it. And then I have maybe one doing market research, competitive research. Then I have one who researches my typical user and try to build user personas. So, it isn't like one prompt does one problem and I send that prompt 10 times. So it's like 10 different avenues of research, you could say. So
Mm-hmm.
so the core workflow I think have five by default. So it's like market research, competitive research, user persona research, and I can't remember the other two in my head, but technical stack and feasibility, I think. And I have experimented with a lot of different avenues there. So,
And
but those are kind of the core ones.
yeah, and how do you learn that stuff? Like what you're saying is amazing, but how do you learn that as a beginner?
Yeah, I mean that's I had that I had an advantage there, I think, because since I'm coming from product management, I have been writing technical documentation for 8 years, you know. So I have been learning that way before I started learning about AI. So like so I've learned how to do that research on my own. So that has definitely helped me in my prompting and like the context gathering I need to do for the prompting. Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I'm building the framework as well. Like I'm building that and trying to give that to others so that others can like use that framework and uh, not skip that step because I don't want people to skip that step, but you can get like a started easily. But it is important to learn how it works. Like, why is it important to have a goal? Why is it important to have success metrics and all of those things? So I think like the core principles are really important to learn for anyone building a product, especially as the product matures, because you're going to have to improve that product and tweak it and fine tune it in the direction that your users want. So that's kind of the core idea there. But yeah, I think I had a lot of that thing from pre AI in that sense. So
Yeah,
I had some
and
advantage there.
you have like a code base uploaded to GitHub, from what I know. So this is what it is about? Yes?
I mean, most of the things are there, like the kind of like the free resources that I have are there. I mean, I have a sea of prompts like on my local computer, but the thing is, I have uploaded like the get started stuff in this repo, so it's easy to get started. But if anyone is interested in more advanced stuff like parallel runs and these parallel research flows and stuff, there is some simple stuff in that repo as well. But I have more experimental stuff, let's say, on that is it needs a lot more tweaking for the use case, and it's a lot harder to set up, but it's also a lot more powerful once it's running.
Going back to level zero, like complete beginner, how do you learn how to use Cloud Code? Because the techniques you've described are amazing, but like, what is your main
Yeah,
advice to people who get started just in this?
yeah, but I think the main thing is to get started. I think Cloud Code, especially, and Gemini CLI and all of those tools that are like terminal based, and even Cursor for some can be like intimidated to get started with because it's like, especially if you're not familiar with coding, because it's like a developer environment, or it's a coding environment, or a terminal. So the first step is to just get started, download it, and try it out. And I think you will be amazed within the first 5 minutes of using it, whichever tool you choose. So that is like my first advice: get started. And if you take Cloud Code specifically, it is very easy to get up and running, especially if you have an existing code base, but also in a new code base. You run /init, and Cloud Code will literally write the setup for you. So it will create its own like understanding of your code base, a rule set, and then you can start asking questions about the code base. So then you can just start prompting. So that's how I would get started. Like start very simple and don't start coding right away, but start asking questions like in the no code, non-coding mode. So like in the chat mode where you just ask about it. So instead of saying, please build a function for this, say, how should I build this function? So I would start very small and don't try to build too much at once. Try to start small, and especially if you don't know coding, you should definitely start small, and you should ask things like security things, and you should ask things like uh, persistence, like database setup, and use MCP servers. Like if you want to use a database, I pick a database that has a good MCP integration, like Superbase or something like that. Get that set up and use the MCP server. But for most cases, I would also say that SQLite is probably fine for most beginner use cases. If it, for like most small apps, so that's also something that the LLM understands really well and can build really well with without a lot of guardrail prompting.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And moving on to a bit more detailed stuff. So, as you've mentioned before, like not in this podcast, but generally, like 90% is prompting, 10% is actually building, as I understand. So, this 90-10 rule. But how to not get stuck? Like, for example, I usually tend to have this problem that I build something out and I spend a lot of time like fixing it. Like, so how
Yeah.
to because you tell Claude one thing, it tells you that it did it. When you test it, it doesn't work. When you tell it again, when you give it some clues, like whatever, how do you overcome that hurdle?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing as well. Like, I wouldn't recommend most beginners who actually have no coding experience to start with Cloud Code, start with Lovable or something like that,
Yeah,
to like get familiar with it before you kind of jump into the advanced stuff. But yeah, so around the planning and stuff, like the prompting, like 90% prompting, I would say that it's 90% gathering context, and in that is prompting a lot. So with the PRP framework, like which is a derivative of PRD, so it's like product requirement prompt, which is an attempt for me to have the LLM go and gather most of the context that it will need to like do the work. So it is very beginner friendly to get started with PRPs as well. And you when you start building a PRP, you kind of feed it an idea, or you can even feed it like a PRD if you have done all of that prep work yourself. And it will go out and do the research and look for all of the documentation that it will need, and it will like kind of store it in a neat way so it will know what to reference as it builds. But one of the main uh, things with the PRP as well is that you have to, when you have generated the PRP and you will have like this detailed implementation plan fully scoped out for your task or for your feature, there in 5 times out of 10, I would say, there will be something weird in there that you have to like go and find yourself. So, it might say, use this library, and that's a library that you don't want to use, or it might say, uh, have like some implementation guideline of a feature that is like completely wrong, so you kind of have to like go and delete that. So that is the main uh, problem for an inexperienced person to like spot those cases. So that's like really the hard part, and that's where you go wrong usually with AI coding in general when you don't have the experience, because you will have I mean, many call it like an hallucination, but it's like just an assumption that is wrong, basically. And then you will like learn the next time how to kind of prompt around that. So when you get started, I would say try not to build too large things. So even if you use PRP, which is like intended to build like quite large things in one pass, you can still use the PRP, but you can prompt it to build like a small task. So you can have like set up my database, or set up this database table, or some kind of much smaller thing, build one endpoint or something like that. And for that, you can kind of like stop at the end, build your unit test for what you just built, or you can even do it the other way around, build unit test first and then build the endpoint. And then you can run several like code reviews from different perspectives on that. So not that you have to do the code review yourself, but you can have AI do your code review as well. So you can have like a security review, a feasibility review, and you can prompt it in many ways to do code reviews. And Cloud Code especially is extremely good at doing code reviews. So depending on how you set it up, and I have also in the PRP repository several starting points for writing code reviews
hmm
or code review prompts.
But from my experience, also, Cloud Code usually uses like some old libraries, like when coding or stuff like that, or
Yeah,
outdated stuff or outdated code structures. How do you overcome that with MCPs or something different?
yeah, that's one of the main problems, or like one of the core problems. And what I do, I don't necessarily like that much to use MCP servers for context. I use my MCP servers mainly for validation gating. We can get to that later. But there is some really interesting MCPs like going around, like Taskmaster MCP and Crawl for AI, the RAG MCP that Colmedin has built as well. I think it's really interesting with like the graph finding of different library documentation. But my core workflow is just pasting the documentation that I know that I will need into my repository in a folder I call AI Docs. A lot of YouTubers that I follow as well and see they use some kind of similar document like Docs or AI Docs or coding docs or some derivative of that, and you know exactly what you will need from this framework. So you kind of like try to keep the snippet of documentation that you put in concise, so that you only actually copy the thing that you know that you will need, because you also don't want to like overfeed into those documents. You don't want the entire documentation there. You only want what you need. So that's also like a learning curve. You have to like learn what you need from each library doc. But yeah, it's definitely difficult to do that. Like a lot of times, one of the things that I do is that is quite useful is when I develop with Python, I use UV as my dependency management library. So Astral by UV is like a pip replacement for dependency management and environment management. And if you use UV add and then the package name or library name, it will automatically install the latest version. But like Cloud Code and others really, really want to go in and edit the requirements.txt or edit the PyProject.toml file and like write their own version number there. So that's like something that I have really strict guardrails in my rules to never do that. And that always, if like how I started was actually I said to never install packages, and if you need a package installed, tell me and I will install it myself. But now I have instead started using UV, and I use this UV add to make sure that I always get the latest version. And yeah, so for example, run into problems a lot with Pydantic, that it uses Pydantic, not using Pydantic v1 but using v2, and especially when you work with the new library that it doesn't have in its context window. So Pydantic AI, or I use Pydantic AI a lot. It has gotten a lot better with Cloud Code, but it still doesn't have the latest docs. So you always have to feed it the latest docs in some way, and it's getting better and better to finding it itself, because it now has the web search capability, so it can actually go and look for the right documentation. But it's way more efficient to put it into the repository in a folder as an MD doc, because then it can like grep it and rip grep certain parts of the documentation and actually find a specific piece that it's looking for. I've also tried experimenting with something interesting lately, that is like go into the venv directory, like so the virtual environment directory, and actually find the package and look for the like module you're trying to import to kind of figure out how it works. That's also an interesting way of using it. So it's been semi-successful so far, but I think soon we will be able to do that really effectively. So I think that will be potentially a solution to that problem as well.
That's very niche, but yeah, okay. And what do you think about using Claude or maybe Cloud Code even to write that documentation? Do you do that, or do you do something else?
You mean the library documentation
Like
itself?
AI docs that you mentioned, like which you give to
Yeah, so
AI.
the AI docs is for several use cases. So first of all, it's the core of it is to copy paste markdown from the web, from like official documentation. So say that you're using Fast API or whatever framework you're using, and you notice that the AI gets it wrong all the time. You like take the snippet from that documentation and put it in. So that's like use case one. Another use case is to put examples. This is really powerful. So like say that you or someone else has developed something very similar to what you were trying to do before. You can like go to GitHub and find an example of this implementation and paste it in there. And you can like reference it in your prompt to like read this, and I want to do this, but for my use case kind of thing. So that is really, really useful as well. So for that, you can definitely use AI, because you can create a code base. Say that you work with Pydantic AI. I know a lot of people probably want to build like agents and stuff. Like say that you use LangChain or whatever. You put up a repo, a fresh repo, and you kind of like wipe code and experiment a little bit. Like how do I set up an agent, and how do I build a tool? And then you kind of like clean it up. Like this is like the class that I want for my agent. This is how I want to set up a tool, and this is what I want to mirror every time I create an agent. Every time I create a tool, I want to mirror this exact thing. Copy paste that into your AI docs of the project that you actually want to build, And then whenever you build a new agent, you reference that. And every time you build a tool, you reference that. So it will like kind of mirror your previous work really, really well. So that's something that I do a lot. Like I have been experimenting with these like agent classes, so that the agent, whenever you set up a new agent, it gets the right context, like the time and the date and all of those things. So I have a pretty extensive like agent class setup whenever I create an agent in Pydantic AI, for example, that I always like reference.
Okay, so now while we're at it, what other tips do you have in this, like referencing and basically giving context to AI agent? What else do you do?
Well, I mainly use the PRP framework for this. So the PRP framework is built for this exact use case of gathering the right context. So when you have your idea kind of scoped out, you can see this example. Like if you watch Colmedin's latest YouTube video, he actually goes through my framework. Like he uses my framework for his creation of the agent that he builds here. Maybe you can link it in the description.
Yeah, I will. I will.
Yeah, and then he basically has this idea that he pastes into the framework, and then the agent that he sends that to goes to search the web, and then it like pastes all the references in a little snippet, so like web URLs and links. Like he uses something he calls examples, a folder he calls examples, which is exactly what I use with AI docs, where he kind of like references the examples in that folder. And the agent in that use case actually goes and find every URL that they need to reference in the implementation. So whenever you start like your new context window for the actual implementation, and you feed it that like prompt or PRD, it will start by like referencing all of that. Like it will read all of those things and put it in its context window, and it will already kind of have a primed instance of your agent to start working on whatever you want to build. And how that like came to be is like I did this work manually for a very long time. Like for all of last year, I would say I did gather all of this context manually and copy pasted it into my code base, or found some kind of smaller automatic way, like semi-automatic ways of getting this context into my code base. But the key was always to get it into your code base so that it's easy for you to reference it to the AI, so that the AI can find it easily. And yeah, kind of as I said, like it's getting easier and easier with these kind of RAG MCPs or the web search, so that it can kind of like go and search the web autonomously. But what I don't like about the RAG things usually is that you don't really control that much what it finds, like how the chunks are split up, and it might lose miscontext with the RAG solution. So I still very much prefer to make sure I have at least the key documentation in my repository so that I can easily reference it. And especially if you want to do follow-up prompts, like because when you do build something with AI, even if you use like PRP that is intentionally trying to build like a very, very large piece of work at once, it doesn't necessarily get you 100% on one prompt. It might get you 95%. So then you have to like do a couple of follow-up prompts, and then it's really, really valuable to be able to reference the documentation, because it might have just used an import wrong or a module wrong. And then you can easily spot that, and you can just say, okay, here you did this issue, read this documentation to learn exactly how to do it and fix it. So then it's pretty easy to address those issues.
For example, you plan out a project, you think of all the things, like you plan those with those agents, whatever. And in the development, you think of some other feature, or maybe your users ask for a feature. Do you like create additional documentation and then reference it, or do you one-shot it and then ask it to create documentation, or what do you do?
Yeah, so here again, I use PRP. So PRP was originally developed for kind of this use case exactly. So like how to uh, continue building on a code base that already exists. So like for me, one reason was because I kind of came in sometimes and started working on a code base that existed, and I needed to help a client with something, and I needed to kind of get onboarded quickly and starting to build quickly. So what the PRP actually does, and one of the core features of it, is that it will not only go and find context from outside of the code base, it will go find context inside of the code base. So it's strategically prompted to look for reference implementations, look for interaction points that it needs to use, and how to, like, what files exactly it needs to go look into, what files exactly it needs to modify, and exactly how to modify them, like in the planning phase. So very much like what a senior developer would do if they're going to do like a refactoring job or add a new whatever to the code base. They would need to, go dig a little bit and find exactly where they need to do this work to solve the problem that they have. So it's very much problem based. You give it a problem, it will figure out a couple of options how to solve that problem, very, very detailed, and then you will just pick the best option.
You've mentioned about, wait, give me a second, validation gating using MCPs. Could you come back to that and tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I can start because this is like the most important thing I would say with agentic engineering in general. So validation, agentic self-validation. So this is also something that is very, very implemented into the PRP framework, but that you can use however you use an AI for coding. And that is have the AI create its own test and make them pass. Start with unit test, but also like go all the way up to integration and end-to-end test. Like especially if you're building endpoints, you can like use curl or something, and it can like send its own curl commands. Use linters excessively. Linters and I use like rough a lot in Python, and I
Excuse me,
have like extreme.
what
Yeah.
is linters and what is rough? Like, could you a bit specify?
Okay, yeah, so it's like type safety basically. Like if I put it simply, then it's you put some rules into your linter, and you can run that linter on your code base, and it has to like it will check that your code base is, or that your code is up to those standards.
Oh,
And if it's not up to those standards, it will, like, Cloud Code will loop until it has fixed all of those issues. So it's like a way of getting production ready and making sure that your code base is up to standard. And the most important reason for using like the linters and stuff, I would say, is not actually to get the code base production ready, but it is to not tangle up your code base so that it becomes confusing in the future. So that making sure that you always follow those rules and standards that you have will make it much easier for the next time you spin up Cloud Code and goes and looks at that code to understand it. Because the more structured the code is, the easier it will be for a human to read it, the easier it will be for an AI to read it. And AI is extremely good at following patterns. So if your code base has good patterns, it will be very easy for your code, or for your AI coder to follow those patterns. But yeah, jumping into to more advanced way of validating is with MCPs. So I've been experimenting a lot with this lately. I've been using the Playwright MCP for a very long time on the front end validation. So you can literally do have like Cloud Code go and use Playwright, take a screenshot of the front end, and like get access to the console and fix any issues that it finds. So you can do like end-to-end flow testing, like you can click all the buttons, it can fill all the fields. So it's basically a way of automatically testing what you have built. And with the PRP, it's prompted so that it will continue that loop until it has fixed all of the problems. So that you will never have, by just writing a prompt without validation, you will always have problems. But if you put in the validations there, the AI will try and try and try and try until it has fixed all of the problems.
okay. That's actually sounds very smart because from what you're telling me, it sounds like you step back, you don't look at what's happening, but you're more like a manager, just checking out the.
Yeah, I mean, so I actually don't look a lot in the process of the AI writing the code. I do a lot of work in the planning, and I try my hardest to not have it fail in the coding process already in the planning phase. So I'm looking for the potential issues it might run into already in the planning phase, and I try to work around them in the planning phase. Then when it actually does the coding, I tend to look away because I run several in parallel usually. So like I can't look at all of them at once. And then when it comes back, that's when I kind of start looking again, because that's when I do the code reviews and that's when I do like the validation checks. So of course I always have both automatic and manual checks on the code before I commit it. But during the code run itself, I kind of don't look at all.
So moving aside from the technical questions, let's talk money-wise. What can people sell using this? Because you mentioned about developing apps, and some people might have ideas, some people might not. What are the four niches you mentioned to me the last time? And basically, can you elaborate on those a bit more?
Yeah, so I mean, with using AI to build stuff, you can technically build anything. So any idea you have, you can build. But if you're building AI solutions right now, I would say that there are kind of like the core ones would be in sales, marketing, SEO, customer service, and actually software development as well. So I know I've talked a little bit with you about building developer tools. But I think that there is still a lot of like automations you do in software development and product development, like not only for software developers, but for anyone working in software, from product manager to designers to analysts to, yeah, anyone really can build a lot of automations like for themselves and for their teams with AI. But if you want to build like product for clients, then it's customer service, sales, marketing, and SEO, and a handful more potentially, but those are like the main ones.
And for people who are starting out, would you recommend using tools like Any10 to get a basic grasp or do something else?
Yeah, I mean, I am not using Anyten really. Like I have dabbled a little bit, but I write most of my automations in Python. But yeah, Anyten is a great tool. It's great for prototyping, especially. But you can certainly run entire workflows from Anyten, and for like especially for small businesses, or like say that you run your own business and you don't really have the time to get into coding, for example. Anyten is great because you can like automate basically anything, but it's hard to like debug, I would say. But it is certainly valuable for like smaller companies, and for things that you don't need to scale, it's great. For things that you don't have to have an app around it, something that just runs one off and you can manually trigger it once a week or something, that's perfect.
About scaling part, so as I understand, you're referring right now to small companies like local businesses having like simple automations. But if you want to sell to enterprise clients, as I understand, you need to develop like end-to-end solutions with interfaces, backend, security, like whatever. So for that, you need to learn how to code. So
More or less, yeah. It depends on the use case really, because there are certainly use cases for things like that, and then even in an enterprise, like for a, but then again, it's like for one team in that enterprise, you can use anything for one thing. So that's kind of the way to look at it. But that's also the best way to automate. Like you don't want to try to automate an entire enterprise. You want to like look at one solution, like one problem, and then automate that one. So that's kind of how you find the real value in automations, doing the small ones.
And do you think that AI will replace people in the future building this stuff? So, for example, you can go one day into AI and tell it to build like the next CRM or whatever, or do you think our profession will still be valuable?
Yeah, so I mean, I think of it like this. I have spent myself, I have bet quite hard on learning to code, right? I've spent most of my time for the last 2.5 years learning how to code and learning software development and software engineering. So I have bet quite hard that this profession is not going anywhere. So my bet at least is that software development is not going anywhere, and I don't think that good software developers who adopt AI and stay efficient and stay on top of the latest technology will not be replaced. But I do think people who don't use not necessarily AI, but people who don't stay efficient will be replaced by people who are. So I think that slackers are in trouble.
But you can say this about any profession, like not
Exactly,
development.
exactly. So I mean, I don't think it's like any different from any other new technology coming in any other field. Like you need to, like you could say the same for software development. It has happened before, like whenever a new abstraction of a language comes out, like Python is a good extraction, right, on top of a language. So uh, that also made it more accessible to people, coding. And now coding is becoming way, way more accessible to people. So the learning curve for learning how to code will become way smaller, and the more people who learn how to code, the harder the competition is going to be in software. So I think that there might actually be more jobs in software within a few years, but there's also going to be way more competition to get them.
That's actually smart because I imagine right now, as you've told, you learned to code in 2.5 years. So you basically have this super mentor. You don't need to like read some textbook. You just ask it questions, from what I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's like an interesting thing, like I have worked with developers for my entire career, and I know how their process looked like, learning to code and like using Stack Overflow and all of those things, like finding copy pasting solution off the internet and really Googling for problems and looking at how others people have solved certain problems. I didn't go through that a lot, I basically didn't ever go to Stack Overflow. I just used AI or Google as
You
my
might
kind of
have used
go-tos.
it, but you don't know.
Yeah, I mean exactly. Like I might have gotten examples from Stack Overflow, but through AI,
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't even have an account, in Stack Overflow.
That's next level, to be honest. Okay, how do you stay ahead, or at least keep up with the pace of AI as a normal human being?
Yeah, I think this is really hard, and I think it's you kind of have to find a way to not. I mean, so for me, for example, what happens to me is that I get stressed when I don't see the latest, read the latest article that comes out, or follow on, test the latest API capabilities of Anthropic, So when new tools and capabilities come out with Cloud Code, for example, then I know I want to start testing it right away. But like for example, now when I've had some vacation, I haven't tested it. There was a hooks capability that came out a few days ago that I haven't tested yet. I have barely tested the Gemini CLI. I have just installed it and run some basic PRP tests on it to see if it works. But I haven't like gotten into testing it. So those are things that like stress me out. I wanna go and do it, right? But so I feel like I'm falling behind somehow. But I think that you can. Uh, think of it like this: like a lot of people are staying up on the absolute latest and following everything, but it's not like sustainable in the long run for anyone to do that. So like pick your niche of what you want to stay into and follow that as much as you can, but don't get stressed when you can't look at everything. So don't be like me.
So, do you think there will be like an army of small AI agents in the future, which are specialists in their niche, or there will be like a master AI agent who you tell to do something and it does it?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thought experiment, I think. I do think that we will see a lot more fine-tuning soon. So I do think that you will have, especially like enterprises and bigger companies will have like fine-tuned LLMs for specific use cases. But that doesn't mean that you won't have an orchestrator managing all of those. So you might still, like as a human, you might still have the interface of the smart agent or the super smart agent, but you will have let's call it an army of specialized agent or triggers or workflows or webhooks that you can like kick off through that orchestrator agent to do specific tasks or tool calls or separate like agent flows through that. So that's kind of where I think it's going. I think we already see a lot of things going that direction with this kind of like orchestrator pattern. And like even if you take a deep look at Cloud Code, that's basically how Cloud Code looks. Like Cloud Code can spawn versions of itself within itself to do like specialized tasks. So that's really meta, and I think that that's how I try to build things, and that's how I think that that's where I think the future is going. With there's probably going to be many other versions as well in parallel, but that's the avenue I'm exploring at the most.
Like AI companies will essentially develop AI models to be extremely cheap or almost zero, as for example, I anticipate. And do you think that the future of AI will be only competition in adoption of it, not necessarily the development as it is right now?
I mean, I think that at some point, we will probably reach the max of what an LLM is capable of, and we will have, some other type of AI. potentially. So I don't think that the research I don't think will ever stop. Like we've opened this box now that's never going to close in a way. So I don't think that that will ever stop. And I don't actually agree. I don't think that it will become so cheap that that it won't affect like the company wallet, you know? Because I think that if you look right now at like compute costs, Cloud Code, for example, you can buy for this 200 euro subscription per month, and you get a lot of API credits. Like I mean, I have been using it very extensively since the release, and you can use this tool and you can like check how much it would have cost you on the API, and you know like it's thousands of euros
Yeah,
if I would
yeah.
use it through the API, and so there is already. I don't think that that 200 plan is going to be the max plan much longer. I think it's going to be like €1,000 plan or a €2,000 plan. That's going to be like the max plan soon. So that's the direction I think it's going in. And I think that as a company, a larger company, especially using AI, you will have like your compute budget, you know, and you will have a huge budget allocated for AI tool calls and like AI LLM calls and different API usage from AI models. You will probably have a pretty huge budget for that, I think, going forward.
Okay, but what do you think about this theory? That was my question. That, for example, OpenAI bought like Windsurf recently, and stuff like that. So, do you think like these big AI companies will double down on buying existing solutions and user bases as a terms of reinvesting into their business? Like, because I think like
Okay, yeah.
uh, as you said, LLMs will develop, reach their potential, whatever competition will be there, and you know it's a race to bottom because we're all selling essentially the same product at the end. So, do you think that AI, like big AI companies, will transform into these like I don't know private equity firms, like in a way to just buying these startups and whatever?
Yeah, I mean, look at Google; they're already doing it, right? So I mean, it's I think yeah, absolutely. I think that especially, I mean, if you look at that case specifically, like with the windsurf case, I think that the reason why OpenAI did it is to try to catch up to Anthropic on the coding side, and they want data, like they want coding data, so to train their models on. So that's the main reason I think that they bought it. And yeah, so I think that they will continue to buy companies that will provide them with data, but I don't necessarily think that they will buy product companies to supply products to the people,
Oh, okay,
if that makes sense.
that's a different angle.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
think that there will be a plenty of opportunities for companies to be built on top of AI, but I also think that the model's core capabilities, like the models themselves, without the product, will be quite good at some point at solving a lot of the problems that a lot of like the API wrapper companies are solving today. So I mean, we can coding. I think at the moment is the best example of that, where you can say that you know Windsurf and Cursor and all of those are you know AI coders, but right now you have the best coders actually coming out of the directly from the free core companies. You have like Gemini CLI, Codex CLI, and Cloud Code, which are probably the most capable coders for like AI coders that you can access right now. So like the purest access to the model itself without a bunch of
Yeah,
cost
yeah, yeah,
optimizations on
yeah,
top of it. Yeah,
yeah. Without any middleman, so you,
exactly, exactly.
yeah. Okay, I've heard this theory that websites of the future will be highly personalized based on your data. Whatever, you will have your personal website version when you shop or something like that. Do you believe in that? And if you do, how soon do you think it will happen?
Yeah, I think this is also a very interesting area of experimentation and research actually, because I'm doing research in this area myself. And so what I'm building is, and I guess in short, I do believe it. I do
Okay.
believe that it's coming in different shapes and forms. So I think that it will, first of all, there will be probably a future where we have a lot of landing pages that has like voice AI, so you can talk to someone when you land on a web page or a mobile app, and you can do most of the interaction through a voice. And secondly, I think that we will have websites adapting in real time to your behavior. So like think of it like a game. You can think of it like say GTA, where your actions will determine the future. And I think it will be the same on a website where you will basically have uh, code being written as you traverse the website. So like you might have a button and nothing exists behind that button, but if you click that button, it will be built for you as you click it. So that's kind of
And
an
it takes
interesting
into account like
experiment.
data we have on you, like your user profile, like whatever, like what colors you like.
Yeah,
Simple example would be like that.
yeah, something like that. I mean, something that I am experimenting with at the moment is like this automated CRO, so customer retention optimization, where I'm basically having Post-Hog hooked up to Cloud Code and using the Cloud Code SDK to optimize a landing page. So like it's running several A/B tests per day based on user data and different types of interaction data, and it can even watch the user recordings of how they interact with the website to like optimize for different metrics, like optimize for churn and optimize for conversion and stuff like that. So that's a really interesting area, I think, where you can basically have uh, like say you can set your success metrics and Cloud Code or whatever will test different solutions until it hits those metrics. So it's like kind of another way of validation looping, but
Mm-hmm.
you loop against the metrics instead. And that's something that like happens in real time. So Cloud Code can literally write code, test it, deploy it, and cycle around that life cycle as many times as it sees fit.
Okay. And I'm not sure how we will respond to this question, but do you think there will be a Skynet type of solution in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about that. I mean, there's always a risk, right? So it depends. I think that there is it is an important topic, to discuss. I think that there's a lot of research from the top companies and like top researchers at least that are, pushing a little bit for pressing the brakes on some of these research areas at the moment. But yeah, it's not my areas of expertise, so I don't want to like say too much here. I will leave it to smarter people than me to figure that out.
So if Skynet is watching this video, don't mark this person.
Yeah, I always write please and thank you, so that's
Oh,
my
so you
contribution.
waste you're one of those people who waste like millions in tokens like on please and thank
Absolutely, yeah.
you.
Absolutely. I
But you're
I'm very
polite.
friendly with my AI.
Never know when it will decide your future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so moving on to the enterprise part, I will make it a bit shorter. But in your experience, what's the main difference between enterprise clients and small clients? Like small companies, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, so for the workshops, it's like it's like you see a pattern usually with it's not a big difference actually like with the workshop because you see the same kind of pattern that a lot of the leadership of the company really wants to adopt AI and wants to have like their team working with AI to boost efficiency or whatever the reason might be. But you have a lot of resistance, and you usually see the most resistance from the most senior developers. So the people like with the highest chance on net return, I would say, are usually the most reluctant to dive in. But what I also see is like when the most senior people do adopt AI and when they actually use like these principles, agentic coding principles, they also are the ones that like are the most efficient, like by far. So like when I recently helped the company to adopt like not exactly PRP, but like a version of PRP fitting their own code base into like a client project, and I couldn't have done it. Like it couldn't have been done without the help of their most senior person because he knew all of the ins and outs of that project. He wrote the rule set for the AI. So like in order for an organization to actually adopt AI effectively and for the AI that is being implemented to be consistent for every developer in that team, it really is critical that the most senior people on that team is adopting it as well, because those are the guys who will set the foundation for everything that happens next. So that I would say is the main. challenge for enterprises to adopt AI, and not only to adopt AI as a product, but to adopt AI in their internal stack and in their internal teams.
As a business owner, you focus more on enhancing existing workforce of a team of a company rather than building like solutions for them. But I know that you also have
Yeah.
that part of a business. So how does it work? When you determine when you want to offer something to teach or when you want to build a solution?
Yeah, so I push mostly the workshop, and sometimes I get automations from that. So then there is something that they want to automate, and there is something that I know someone who wants to automate something that I help them automate it with. So yeah, finding those projects, I think, is something that I'm starting to do right now. So I haven't had to look very hard for them until now. Like they have kind of came to me. But at the moment, I'm, setting up a website and doing some content on LinkedIn and stuff like that, trying to find clients for the automations as well. But when you like to actually find the problems to solve, I think kind of what I said before, like you want to start with something small. You don't want to start like building an agent to solve everything. You want to rather find a specific problem that can, push the needle on one metric a few percentage at a time, and do like this kind of like smaller automations for like the sales funnel is usually a good place to start. Like how you can free up the workload from some administrator in the sales funnel to like manage people, manage leads, uh, get new leads, stuff like that. So that's a good place to start, I would say.
And from what you say, you start like, if I might say it like that, from a smaller stuff, from a simpler automations. So it's all about building that trust, that relationship to just sell at some point the bigger parts. Or yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, and that's a good way for you to learn the system as well, because then you will work with like smaller things, and you will get to know people, you will learn how they work internally, you will learn their systems. So then when you are implementing a RAG agent to, pull all the data from some system and let people chat with it or whatever it might be, then you already know a lot of things going into that. So it will make it a lot easier for you to build that solution as well.
is it still early to get into this niche, into your opinion, or has the train passed right now?
No, I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I think that it's growing exponentially still, and it's hard. I think it's hard for companies to find uh, experienced people who does this because, like, if you think of it, like people who build AI automations powered by LLMs specifically, that business hasn't existed for more than 2.5 years. Like, not even 2.5 years, less than 2.5 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like it is very early, even though things are moving extremely fast. It is still very early. Competition is hard in some areas and in some cases, but if you find your niche and something that you're interested in and something that you can, deep dive into and really learn everything about, then you have a good 20 years ahead of you, I think.
Well, that's a nice career path because from what I heard about some careers, like they don't have enough, even a few years, like before them. So that's a good bet from what you said, like that you're investing your time and stuff like that. Okay, throughout this podcast, you've been referencing your code base. Could you actually show it to me and do like a high level overview? And while Rasmus is finding that code base, let me tell you something. If you are interested in learning about it in more detail, I will link the video in the description. So as soon as Rasmus releases it, so this will be like a general overview, and in that he will do a deep dive. And also, if you want to work with Rasmus, you can find all of his social links in the description.
Yeah. So here is actually the kind of code base that I use for like when I want to explore some kind of new ideas and stuff. So uh, what you can see here is also like I have some uh, documentation here in my AI docs, and these documentations are actually the latest documentation from Cloud Code. So like I have, yeah, everything just copy pasted straight up from Cloud Code, Anthropic's Cloud Code documentation pages is here. So if I want to, learn something new, I can just, spin up Claude, and I can say, please go look at the PRP/AI docs /all deeply and explain back to me how to use Cloud Code hooks. Because that's like the next thing I'm going to start exploring. So I'm just going to spin that up here while we're talking. But yeah, so what I have here is my PRP framework. So I have a README here inside of the PRP folder, which explain what PRP is. So yeah, I'm just gonna like read through everything here, but in short, a PRP is a PRD, so it's a product requirement document, plus curated codebase intelligence, so references to the codebase you're working on, plus the agent runbook, or agent and runbook, which means like that it's the detailed plan for the AI to follow, and it's aiming to be a minimum viable packet an AI needs to ship production-ready code on the first pass. So it's designed to ship the product on one pass. So it will like get all the necessary context to complete the entire feature or product in the first pass. So I'm going to go over one use case here. I have my slash commands split up into folders. The one that is like the base is this create base PRP. So create the base product requirement prompt. You can have a feature ID as your argument. So you paste in your PRD, your Jira task, your Jira ticket, your product idea, problem statement, whatever you kind of have as a starting point, you put in here. The better that problem statement is, the better your results is going to be. And then it is some prompting here. So it will generate a complete PRP for the general feature implementation with thorough research and ensure that context is passed to the AI agent to enable self-validation and iterative refinement. So that is like kind of the core of what is it trying to do. And then here you can see this is like some guardrail prompting to like explain to the AI why it needs to do this. Then there is some chain of thought stuff here. So like the research process itself, things that it has to do. It will go into your existing code base and do an analysis. It will do external research on finding things online and, go to GitHub, Stack Overflow and blogs, finding best practices and common pitfalls. And it will also ask you. So it's semi-interactive, I would say. So it will ask you for patterns to follow. So if you know how your code base works, you would actually put it in the argument. But if you haven't put anything there, it will like ask you where do I find this function if it can't find it and so on. Then it will use the template, the PRP base template, and it will start filling that template with all the information that it finds. We'll take a look at that in a second. But here it also is like some critical context to include. So some interesting thing that I have kind of recently added is here like the gotchas and like kind of what not to do. So a lot of things around restricting it, what not to do, is also been really helpful to get better results. And here it's also giving some more chain of thought things like how in the process order it should be doing. And here it's also like reinstating like this validation gates that are here. And here is just like a checklist of it needs to make sure that these things have been done. And it will also score the PRP. This is like experimental, but it's a little bit of a funny thing at the moment because it will give itself a success score. How likely do you think Cloud Code will be at completing this PRP that you just created in the first pass, basically? So it will give you a confidence score here. It usually gives itself like between 8 and 10, so it's usually quite confident, but it's just interesting to see what it thinks of what it created. So that's why it's there. But yeah, it's pretty fun. The template itself, you can see there is quite a lot of templates here, so like feel free to explore these and test them out. It's quite fun just running these on certain ideas and stuff and see what happens. But yeah, then we have the base template. So this is like what it will fill out. So right here, this is just placeholder. Everything in here is just placeholder text and instructions how to use it. So optimized for AI agents to implement features with sufficient context and self-validation capabilities to achieve working code through an iterative refinement. So core principles, consistency king, validation loops, information dense, progressive success. But yeah, then we have the different sections. So the goals, here it will take the goal, any goal that you have put in the argument, like in your feature description, it will put here. It will add the reasons why this is important, the what's, the success criteria. So if you have added anything of this yourself, it will copy paste that. And that is like the best way to do it. So the better your initial research are, especially on these 4 points, the better your end result is going to be, and the more aligned with your actual goals it's going to be, because it will then be like you who did this. It will not be the AI who kind of made something up based on something. And here is the kind of what I talked about before. So this is like the context gathering area. So here it will put all of the context and document references that it needs to finish this task. So it will put in official API documentation and why it needs access to that. So here we'll put Codebase intelligence, so like links to different paths in this existing codebase and why it needs access to that. And here specifically pitfalls about different libraries. So this is actually pretty interesting. Like it has learned itself a few different things, especially like in Pydantic. It's funny because it has kind of learned how to work around some of these like config dict stuff and things that it kind of keeps running into. So sometimes you see that here, if you read this, that it's telling itself to like avoid those things. So it's pretty funny. And here is the AI docs thing. So if you have put stuff in the AI docs, it will reference that here as well. It will run some tree to get like the tree structure and the tree structure that it wants when it's done. Here is the gotchas, so kind of critical stuff. Implementation blueprint. So here it will put, if you have some data models and data structures, it will put it here. Here it will put like an entire task list. So it will use kind of like these keywords. So this is taken from also like a YouTuber called IntoDevDan. Like he uses this concept of information dense keywords. So like things like modify, find, inject, mirror, modify, like a lot of these very powerful words that makes a task description so much denser, so it doesn't like have to write a very long description for itself, but it can just use these words a lot to make it very dense. And this task list can be like a number of tasks. So I've seen sometimes it has created up to 50 tasks. So, you know, that's also when you have a task list that is more than 15 at least, then you know that you probably should split it into smaller PRPs. But that's also an interesting, because then you can just ask, you can just run the / command again and ask it to create 2, create 3, create 5 PRPs for this problem. So then you can just run them in sequence. Here it gives some pseudocode and examples, integration points. So this is like the intelligence it gets from your code base. So this is really powerful when you work on an existing code base, because it will go and find the integration points that it needs to know about, and it will reference it here. So it will have easy access to that as it's working. So syntax and style, so how it will, this is like the validation looping. So this is like a really, really important part. So it will start with the syntax and style. So this is also like, I have a lot of rules around this in the Claude.md, which is like the general rules. So here you can like define all of your rules and a lot of stuff. So here is a simple version actually that you can get started, especially if you would reuse Python, then this is a great starting point. But I also have some other starting points in here for Gradle, Maven, Node, the basic Python one that we're looking at right now, and also a React one. I will update this because I have several others of these, but they're quite outdated because these are like the latest projects that I've worked with, so these are all up to date, but I have some much older ones that are not really up to date, that needs to be like gone over before I upload them. But this repository that is public in my GitHub will be maintained, and I will update it with like the latest stuff that I use all the time. So that will be where you kind of find the latest things I'm working with on my real projects. But also with that, I also want to say that a lot of the, like if I think the Cloud MD, as I take that as an example, it's extremely specific to the project I'm working on. So it has a lot of references to the existing code base. So those will look different on every project. and yours should look different too, and it should be very specific to your project. So it's hard to give like a perfect Cloud Code or Cloud MD file to anyone. But yeah, level 2 is the unit tests. It will write unit tests for everything. It will run them until it fails, and then it will also do integration tests, so that it will do with curl if you're building APIs. You can also do this with, like if you build something with, say that you set up Docker, you can use the Docker MCP. So like you can set up deployment with Docker and whatever, say DigitalOcean. You can use a combination of Docker MCP and DigitalOcean MCP, and you can have it like self-validate with those MCPs as well. Like that's extremely powerful. And then it has like a checklist and then some empty patterns to avoid. And if you want to get more into that before starting, you can also see like an example. This is like an actual PRP that has been generated and ran successfully. So this is like what it would look like before it actually is runnable. But yeah, I think that's more or less it. There is an automatic runner here, so like you can run the PRP totally uninteractive. So like you don't see what's happening; it just runs in the background in your terminal. So that's also pretty cool. And some other commands that is worth exploring. Code quality. So there is some review commands here. So I like to use this one a lot, which is the reviewing the staging and the unstaged area. So it's basically pre-commit review. So like I have several stages of review. So I always review before I stage. I review after I stage. I review after I commit. So I use this one. I can pass, review scope here. So you can do full app. You can do specific commit tag. You can do a specific branch or whatever you can pass here, and it will just follow this process and review your code base, and it will give you a really nice output report with like critical must fix, should fix, and consider. So yeah, that's kind of what I use a lot for my refactoring or my review flow. And I also use Cloud Code a lot for Git operations. So conflict resolving is really cool use case in my opinion, because it's like you can always, if you have some merge conflicts and something, you can just run this and it will like give you suggestions how to resolve it, and it's really fun. This smart resolver here actually like does everything, finds the issue, decides how to resolve it, and resolves it without like asking you. So it's a bit risky, but it's quite interesting how it works. But yeah, explore this on your own. I'm not going to go through everything here. There is a lot of experimental stuff here. So here, if you're into the parallel stuff, take a look at this, because this is some really fun things. You can run this hackathon PRP on any idea, and it will build you an entire app in one go. And it doesn't work 70% of the time, but it's really fun and really cool to see it just like chug on until it thinks it's done. But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm spending a lot of time on, like these experimental. I have, a whole code base of these experimental slash commands, probably like over 100 slash commands that I'm experimenting with. That is, just really fun to see what it can and can't do. And yeah.
How do you come up with those? Because you're kind of an innovator, from what I hear in this field.
Yeah, I mean, I try to try things that others haven't tried. So I mean, I have, of course, my sources of content. I watch Cole a lot. I watch IndieDev Dan a lot. I watch other YouTubers a lot, and I read a lot of blogs like Sam Wilson and some others as well. So of course I get a lot of inspiration from there, but I try to take what they do and either like expand on it or explore the same thing, but like down kind of like a different avenue. So I try to copy and expand and try my own things as well. But one of the main things, like one of the most interesting way of learning is what I kind of kicked off here in the beginning. Like we can take a look at this now. So I wrote a really simple prompt here. I can't remember, but yeah, please go look, da 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 da. So it's like a one-liner. And what it does here is like gathering its own context, because I had pasted a lot of context in this directory. So like if we take a look there again, just to see there is like, I don't know, 10 something documents here. And it will go and read all of those. We can see what it did. It used 11 tools. So it spent a minute to read all of the documents. What it did here is actually spawned several instances of itself to read each document. Then it gives me like an overview of what it is. It's a shell command interface to execute automatically at specific points of the Cloud Code lifecycle. So you can actually, I mean, I know some things about it. You can basically run it pre-tool use, post-tool use, when it's done, or maybe some other, yeah, so here they are actually. Pre-tool use, post-tool use, notification, stop, and sub-agent stop. So you have like those different integration points where you can like run a hook and automate anything. Like I saw some things on YouTube where someone had written a notification hook that sent them a text message whenever Cloud Code was done with the run. But this is something that I want to experiment with, so that, what I do a lot is like I kick off a set of agents and then I take a walk with my dog and they kind of run as I'm walking. So it would be really cool to like get a
But
notification on my phone
this
to
is
see when they're
insane
done.
because you just hire. It's like hiring a person, like a real developer. From what you say, like they can text you, like whatever. Like,
Yeah,
whoa.
we're going there. Like we're going there for sure. Yeah. So I mean that's kind of like that's the area where I'm experimenting in. I don't think that it's like we're there yet, but that is like the most fun area to explore, like trying to get it to act on things autonomously. And kind of like that's kind of like what I'm doing with that CRO thing as well, where I'm trying to have it act on findings and act on different user data without me telling it to act on it, but it will know based on its base context and its like system prompt when it's the right moment to act. So that's kind of what I'm experimenting a lot with, and that's kind of similar here. Like even though a hook is very deterministic and it will tell it exactly when to use this hook, imagine that we also could send a text message, which you can through the SDK. I just haven't tried it yet, but you can through the Cloud Code SDK. You can probably send it the text message with the argument for the PRP. So you send the text message to your code base to create this kind of whatever you would put here, right? Send that as a text message and it will just start working. And it will like go through the entire flow. It will send you a notification when it's done. Then you send like the next text message to like do the next step of the flow and so on, right? So that's kind of what would be really cool. That's what I want to start exploring when I'm back from my vacation. So expect to see that things like that I will be working on in the fall for sure in my free time. But yeah, let's keep looking here, because I'm sure that there are a lot of things here that I don't know yet about this. But yeah, you can configure them in the settings. So they basically look like this, like regular hooks. And common matchers, bash. Yeah, so you can like set up which tools to use. So you basically set up these tools, I think yeah, I think that you do like a meta header, like I don't know what it's called, but where you do those like dashes as a header and you can like set up the tools it's allowed to use. And yeah, anyways, I'm not going to read this out here now. It's an interesting new feature that I haven't explored yet. But this is like how I would start exploring it. But I mean, one way you can just do this. So I'm going to clear. So I'm going to say, please read the slash command for base PRP, the PRP base template, and the PRP/readme.md. Create a version of the base PRP slash command that runs with parallel research agents using the base template. So here you can see that it's also like you don't have to be super specific about the relative path. It will go and find these things. You see, it kind of tries to find the thing, and it realizes that it didn't find them. So now instead it will go and search. So it does like pattern matching to actually find those files. So it's a little bit more inconvenient because it will use a lot more tool calls and tokens to find your files than if you actually reference the right path, but it will figure it out. So this is another way of explaining validation, like self-validation. It's the same concept as writing its own tests. It tests, it fails, it tries again. Tests, it fails, it tries again. So that's kind of the same concept. So this concept of self-validation isn't like something that has been invented in PRPs or anything. It's like a core principle of Cloud Code and any of these tools. So it's a really powerful principle. But yeah, I'm not sure how long this is going to take. Probably will be pretty quickly. But yeah, do you have any questions maybe in the meanwhile?
I'm not sure. I feel thrown off like by the amount of information you've given in this podcast. I'm not sure even how much people are watching up to this point. But yeah, that's very interesting concept. Like for me, just AI transforming from the thing you consult with to the thing you outsource to is a really, really big concept, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
yeah, I mean, it has created something here. I mean, this is like kind of how I draft new ideas for here. I would get way more detailed on that initial prompt and like explaining my idea a lot deeper. So like the planning phase, right, would be much more comprehensive. But yeah, so this is base PRP with parallel research, create parallel research phase. So here it's like the execute the following 4 research agents simultaneously using multiple agent tool calls in a single response. So yeah, we can just let's do.
So it created a PRP on its own.
Yeah, it created a PRP for itself, and the idea is that it spawns agent 1, agent 2, agent 3, and agent 4 in parallel. So let's just do. Do you have any idea? Like anything top of mind? Create. Oh. It doesn't. So sometimes when you do these, you kind of have to pull them out into the commands directory because sometimes it doesn't find it when it's in subfolders here. There it is. So let's just say create a PRP for building. We can take a semi-hard one. So let's say, or let's do something meta. So let's create a PRP for building PRP creation agent using pedantic AI. So it will, it's a very vague idea, but create a plan for something to create an agent for creating PRDs using pedantic AI. But here is like the part I wanted to show is really this part here. You can see that this is the 4 agents now. Task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4. It's like spawning those 4 based on what it like created for itself here to run those 4 agents. Here, agent 4. So yeah, it's using kind of that process that it created for itself. And of course, you couldn't do this just by prompting it without the context. So the key here is really using it inside of this repository because I have already done a lot of the work. Like I've already done a lot of the slash commands. I've already written the PRP templates. I've already added the documentation. It already has that context to like access and get so that it understands already. It probably went to read one of these, that has the parallel runs. Because if we look at this one, yeah, I think it basically has copy pasted this, right? So it has actually taken the learning from this slash command and reused it and kind of like mirrored it in this. So that's a misconception a lot of people have when working with AI, is that they believe that AI is not good at working on existing code bases. But I totally disagree. I think it's completely opposite. And AI is much better at working on an existing code base than it is at working on a new code base. Because when you have a new code base, it has no patterns to follow. It has no existing structure. It has no existing architecture, no data models, nothing. So it's kind of like guessing as it goes and following some kind of best practices from its training data. But you really want to make sure that it's following the best practices that you want. So it's better to find a good template or build your own starting point for the AI so that the AI already has patterns to follow when you start a new project. So that's actually a tip that I would give as well. Use a starting point if you can. If you are familiar enough with setting up a cookie cutter template for a new project, use that. Create a Claude.md referencing things in that cookie cutter and have that as a starting point, because when you then create something new, it will know how to do it. But yeah, so that's how I would. That's kind of like my last tip, I guess.
Okay, so as I understand, this is overview of your code base, like that's it, yeah? Like general overview.
Yeah, this is the PRP code base. I encourage anyone to go and look at it and go find it. I will also, whatever this run here, what the creation will be, I will commit it and you can look at it as well. It will be totally experimental. I wouldn't have read it and I won't have edited anything, but it's kind of like a way of seeing exactly how meta you can get with this and have it like create stuff for itself
Okay,
that I haven't
so
talked about.
so people who want to find you, what is the best way to contact you?
Best way to contact me is definitely for LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn, Rasmus Widing, or go to my homepage, rasmuswiding.com,
Mm-hmm.
which is also where you can find more information about my workshops. I also have a YouTube channel where I will be posting things about my framework and about teaching agentic engineering mainly. And yeah, I think that's it. I will also I'll send you my GitHub so that people can find the repository. And I also have a bunch of other experimental open source stuff there that you can explore if you want to. A lot of it is related to agentic engineering and Cloud Code and Aider and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. So I will leave all the links in the description. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good one.